As a metalhead, and because I often talk about music on this channel, I think now is the time for me to list my top 8 favorite video game original soundtracks of all time. Video game music for a lot of people, even today, is a gateway into younger players discovering their love for music in general. That's one of the things that led my nephew JMap into becoming a musician himself. He started out humming his favorite songs he heard from games he played or sometimes watched me play. I also used to download some of these video game soundtracks and save them to my portable devices so I could listen to them on the go, long before smartphones, long before they widely became available on YouTube. Keep in mind, I'm mostly a retro gamer and I haven't owned a console past the PlayStation 3. I'm sure there's amazing soundtracks in the more modern consoles, but nowadays I only buy a newer game on Steam for my laptop if I feel like it. But there's lots of nostalgic memories associated with the games I will be listing, and a huge part of that experience was the music. And when it came to the video games I'm listing, I would always be just excited that I'm going to hear the music again while playing the game. At least 2 of these games I'm about to list have soundtracks considered the greatest of all time. Some of them are amazing, well-known games with music I just happen to love, while others are some obscure games you might not have heard of. They may not be the greatest games, but I got to give recognition to the music. Especially as you'll see where many of my heavy metal influences come from. And another thing to note, I'm only going to be talking about the game's original scores, not games predominantly featuring licensed music by popular artists. So if you will be saying, oh, but what about the Tony Hawk games, Guitar Hero, Rock Band, Brutal Legend, Need for Speed, Revolution X? Or what about all the Fallout games and the songs you hear on the radio stations? I get it. And I also recognize some of these games I just mentioned are also starting points for those discovering their love of rock, punk, and metal music. So here we go. Now this is going to be an honorable mention, because when are you ever going to hear about this Sega Genesis game at all? I got it as a Christmas gift in the mid-90s, and it's an average hockey game at best, nowhere near NHL 94 or anything like that. But I played it enough times, and the most memorable thing about it is the soundtrack. I mean, for a 16-bit hockey game released in the 90s, this music goes hard. The title screen song actually sounds pretty similar to this gem by Elton John. And when I watched my favorite hockey teams finally win the Stanley Cup, I always had this cup-winning fanfare theme that plays in this game hum in my head. So there you go. You got a bonus listing, because I really didn't consider this game until I started writing this rant. And I know that there's other games I love that have great music that I didn't consider to mention, but I'm really going to keep it down to the next 8. I mean, what can we say about the Legend of Zelda series? Pretty much every game has an amazing soundtrack. And I grew up mainly with the classic overhead games, especially the 3 that were released on Game Boy and Game Boy Color. And even they had amazing 8-bit music. But I gotta give the nod to A Link to the Past. For a 16-bit game, this OST is just as good as any cinematic score on a Hollywood movie. That opening narrated cutscene sets the mood right away and transports you to the world of Hyrule. While a lot of it is meant to be short looping themes, what they ultimately do is capture the mood and feel of your progress through the game wherever you go. whether you're trying to rescue the princess during a storm at night, going through a peaceful village, traversing the overworld or the dark world, encountering the big baddies, and Ganon himself. The dungeon themes, both the light world and the dark world themes, are also fantastic. Even the short tunes like the file select screen are memorable. And then when you beat the game, you're rewarded with a very satisfying and triumphant tune as you watch the mega happy ending unfold. And I understand those who say the later games had better music, but several of the themes heard in Ocarina of Time, the one almost everyone jizzes their pants as the best, they're recycled from A Link to the Past. And I'm giving my nod to A Link to the Past here. It set the bar for how good epic video game soundtracks should sound and feel, and it paved the way for even more epic scores in the series later on. So feel free to tell me which Zelda game had your favorite original score. If you've never heard of this game, that's okay. I don't think it was a well-known game nor a franchise in the US back in the 80s through 90s. This action platformer originally came from Japan and had been remade and released on the TurboGrafx-16 and the Sega Genesis. And the only reason why I played the Genesis version as a kid was because of the game's box art. I distinctly remember seeing it on the shelves of the video store and being intrigued by what I was seeing. Thus, I would rent the game periodically in the mid-90s. And one thing that always stuck with me when I played it was the music. And yeah, you can say that the TurboGrafx version had more crisp gameplay and had better quality music compared to the Sega Genesis. And as much as I understand that sentiment, I still need to give a nod to the Genesis soundtrack. Not necessarily because of my nostalgic feelings for it, but because the Genesis songs have more music compared to the TurboGrafx songs. Like they add some sections. Another thing to note is many of the stages between both versions have the songs switched around. And I think the Genesis version actually did a better job at placing the songs versus the TurboGrafx. They fit the mood of the stage better. Overall, it's a very rocking soundtrack, especially if you like Japanese rock. And if you prefer the CD quality music on the PC Engine, then that's fine. But for me, the Genesis version feels heavier, the bass is more pronounced, and it definitely contributed towards my love of heavy metal music as I got older. It's debatable which of the 5 MMPR games released in '94 was the best version, but I grew up with the Sega Genesis version. And hey, at least the Green Ranger was in the Sega Genesis game, unlike Nintendo. And yeah, it's a bad Street Fighter clone that uses only 2 buttons. But I still have good memories with it, and it is the soundtrack that's the best part of the game. Even though none of the songs are really adapted from any of the Ron Wasserman composed songs in the show, save for the intro and the ending, the rest of the video game songs feels close enough to it, and it's overall a nice heavy soundtrack to listen to. When I discovered Metallica years later, when I first heard the song Shortest Straw, this bit reminded me of this bit from the game. Is that there is a hidden song, an unused stage song that one can still listen if they go to the options menu and toggle with the music and sound test. I remember doing that, messing around, and discovering the song as a kid. And whenever I played the game afterwards, I'd first go to the options menu just so I'd hear the song. I used to imagine what that song was meant for. Like, was it something I unlocked? Was it for Rita's Palace or a different monster stage? 30 years later, it still remains a mystery. Yet it's one of the best songs of the game. And if you don't want to suffer through the cheap gameplay, then just go ahead and look up the Genesis OST on YouTube. You won't be disappointed. Turtles in Time. This is another one of my favorite video games growing up. Whether you're playing the arcade version or the Super Nintendo version, we can agree it's a classic. It wasn't really until the release of Shredder's Revenge in recent years that they finally made a Ninja Turtles game that could match the magic of Turtles in Time. And yeah, the music is great on Shredder's Revenge too, but come on, we're talking Turtles in Time here. From the moment that opening note playing as the intro matches the look of the show, you know that not only are you about to have a good time playing this game, but you're going to hear some great rocking tunes along the way. Pretty much every stage song in this soundtrack is a fast-paced rockin' banger. And no matter what stage you're playing, each song accompanies and complements the destruction of foot soldiers like Peanut Butter and Jelly. Some of my favorite songs from this game are Alley Cat Blues, Skull and Crossbones, Neon Knight Riders, Starbase. These songs stick in my head all the time and have done so for the past 30 years. Starbase is such a good song that they actually use it for Turtles 2 on the Game Boy. And on Turtles 3 The Manhattan Project on the NES. Soundtrack has literally stood the test of time, pun intended. If you're listening and you've only played Shredder's Revenge, all one has to do is check out the soundtrack for Turtles in Time and actually see where it heavily draws influence from. Plus, for any heavy metal aficionado, it's a must listen. Now, you didn't think I'd only list soundtracks that are exclusively rock and metal, did you? Streets of Rage 2 was always my favorite of the original trilogy growing up with the Genesis. Everything from the gameplay mechanic to the atmosphere, and yeah, the soundtrack was also the best too. In fact, Streets of Rage 2 is considered one of the greatest video game soundtracks of all time. And for good reason. This soundtrack, composed by Yuzo Koshiro, is a masterpiece. It makes perfect use of the Genesis sound chip, showing that with the right composer and sound driver, it can generate music that rivaled the best of the day. The opening note for the first stage of that game just immediately hooks you into taking the streets to beat the shit out of some knife-wielding bad guys. Every time I played that game as a kid, that opening song always got me excited to play the game and see how far I could go. It's the absolute best at catchy electronic dance tunes. I'd rather listen to this than whatever gets played at nightclubs. Some of this stuff is just as good as anything you'd hear at a rave party. Plus, it could also be jazzy and moody at times. Yeah, you'll find some great stuff on the officially released Streets of Rage games, but whenever you say Streets of Rage 2, it just feels the most right, you know? Like nothing else could ever match it. And I would also like to take the time to give a special nod to the team behind Streets of Rage Remake, where the creators of the songs did an excellent job at recreating the originals from the first 3 games while giving it enough of their own spin. will still say today that the first Spyro the Dragon game on the PS1 is one of the greatest of all time. I even bought the Reignited trilogy recently on Steam just so I can have the first game. And part of that is, of course, because I fucking love the soundtrack. It's an amazing composition by Stuart Copeland. This is another one of those games where I'm equally as excited to hear the music as I am to go on a 120% completion run. Copeland reportedly played through all the levels himself when the original game was in development before composing the soundtrack. As such, he does a great job capturing the atmosphere of every level. And overall, it's a nice mix of catchy, ambient, progressive rock and jazz. But other than that, it's hard to describe because no other game has a soundtrack like it. I even remember talking to my circle of friends in junior high and raving about this music in the game. So much that I used to place a tape recorder next to the TV and just let each level's respective song play. There's too many levels to list, but some of my favorite levels for the music alone are Dark Hollow, Dry Canyon, Wizard Peak, Dark Passage, Lofty Castle, and probably my favorite of all is Toasty, which label doubles later as Nasty's World theme. Like I said, there really isn't any other video game soundtrack like the Spyro games. It's so distinct that one really doesn't have to guess where the game is from if they hear one of the songs. And if you're not a fan of the soundtrack, I get it. Maybe it's my nostalgia talking, but I'll still gladly hear the music from this game anytime. Metal Gear Solid 3 was easily my favorite of the first 4 games. No, I never played Ground Zeroes or The Phantom Pain. As far as I was concerned, they didn't need to exist. Yeah, maybe the first Metal Gear Solid game had the most memorable catchy tune, but the overall quality of the music went up as soon as Harry Gregson Williams took over composing the score, starting with MGS2. Now the games truly felt like they had original soundtracks that were just as good as any movie released in Hollywood at the time. And as far as I'm concerned, MGS3 was a major upgrade over MGS2 in terms of gameplay and the music accompanying it. Because the game's setting predominantly takes place in forests and jungles, when Snake isn't on any alert, evasion, or caution phases, the music is silent, allowing the player to listen for any sound effects and use his environment to his advantage to evade the guards. But when Snake sets off an alert and is caught in a fight, you feel it because of the pounding sounds capturing the urgency of the situation, giving your heart and head a growing or shrinking sense of danger. This time, compared with the previous entries, each boss fight has their own separate theme, which helped make each boss feel more unique. And I also loved the 1960s feel of the music to reference the game's setting. Part of that was, of course, a nod to the James Bond films of the time, which the main theme sounds like it's directly from in an alternate universe. It also makes good use of electric guitars when needed, referencing the surf rock and the psychedelic rock of the day. The music that plays when you're escorting an injured Eva to safety is also one of my favorites. And of course, the debriefing theme. When you're watching the game's final cutscene and getting all these details revealed to you, really captures the emotions that both Snake and you first feel. Hell, I remember when graduating high school, this theme was playing through my head constantly because I wasn't celebrating graduating high school. I just saw it as more of me leaving a place I hated and ready to take on the next chapter of my life full of piss and vinegar. The soundtrack will always have a special place in my heart. To me, it stands out above the rest of the games. And while other MGS games would follow after 3, they never captured the same attachment I had, nor did the soundtrack seem to be as good either. And finally, in my opinion, the greatest original video game soundtrack of all time is... I mean, was there any doubt? The original soundtrack, written and composed by Yasunori Mitsuda, is still regarded today by many people as the greatest video game soundtrack of all time. And for good reason. It's a timeless classic. The game was originally released in 1995 for Super Nintendo, and because the game was so good, it was re-released multiple times on various platforms over the next 30 years. One can actually buy a version released on Steam. Like many on this list, this is another game where I'm just as excited to listen to the music as I am to play through the game's epic RPG story. My first exposure to the game was in the mid-90s, at a babysitter's house where someone brought a copy of it. I was intrigued by the box art, and even though I was told, Anthony, it's a very hard game for an 8-year-old, I gave it a shot, and from the start, the cinematic opening theme and the common battle music left an imprint in my head. So much that I'd hum the battle song whenever simulating sword fights with my Lego men. And of course, I didn't actually beat it until I was in high school. But the more I played through it, the more the music just stuck with me. It was another soundtrack where I download all my favorite songs off file sharing sites and have them with me on the go. And while the core of the soundtrack is the orchestral arrangements often found in similar Square RPG games like Final Fantasy, this game actually has quite a variety of sounds and moods, as the story takes you through a different time period, from prehistoric to antiquity, to medieval times, to a post-apocalyptic future, and the songs reflect as such. You get the happy, sentimental stuff, the sad stuff, and the really dark and melancholic anthems as the story unfolds. When you first encounter Magus, you're treated with this epic gem. It also branches out to include various styles such as jazz fusion, to hard rock, and of course the first boss theme and final boss theme is heavy metal. Some of my other favorite songs from this game include Shala's theme, The Undersea Palace, World Revolution, and to Faraway Times. Another special thing about the soundtrack is that it has been remixed by countless fans on YouTube. You want a symphonic metal version of Mage's battle theme? You'll find it. You want a rock or metal version of Shala's theme or the Undersea Palace? You'll find it. You want a heavy metal version of the final boss theme? It's been done, and they're all fucking awesome. The Chrono Trigger soundtrack, in my opinion, is hands down the greatest video game score of all time. If you're not a fan of RPGs, or you think, it's too primitive, I don't like 16-bit RPGs, I only like 3D graphics, please play through the game just to hear the music, man. Just do yourself a favor and check out the full soundtrack on YouTube. It's not that hard to find. And that, my friends, is my top 8 favorite video game soundtracks of all time. I know there's many other games that have great and memorable music that I did not list, and that's where I will turn the microphone to you, the listener. What are your favorite video game soundtracks of all time? I'd love to hear them. Please comment below, and if you'd like to talk to me directly, links to my Discord server are in the description below. I'm Desert Coyote 22, and thanks for listening.